Hi, I wanted to talk briefly about Nielsen book title editor. I bought my pack of ISBNs a few days ago, and then a couple of days after, you get a link sent to you to Nielsen book title editor, which is where you actually upload your books and make the book buying industry aware that you're out there and your book is available. So, and there are conflicting opinions from what I've seen as to how far in advance you need to do that before your book is actually published and available for sale. So if you speak to Nielsen, they say that the ISBN said you simply need to do it a couple of days before, and then everybody knows about your book once it's kind of uploaded. Then equally, if you read the information on their book title editor website, it says 13 weeks in advance. When I spoke to a publishing company, they said it needs to be at least 16 weeks in advance. I've read online that it needs to be 20 weeks in advance. I'm working on the basis that actually Waterstones, WH Smiths, the big book distributors, big book retailers, aren't actually going to be that interested in a small-time publisher self-publishing book on market research, and therefore it doesn't matter a great deal. My book would have to build some kind of presence and be for the world to know about it before it those kind of retailers would even consider it, and certainly the likelihood of it sort of being on the table in front of people as they walk in and therefore have dramatic impact on sales, or kind of visibility have dramatic impact on sales, is unlikely, to say the least. So it doesn't matter that much, but I'm still, in keeping with everything associated with this book, I want to do it properly, learn how to do it well, and follow best practice. So I'm doing it in, say, probably between 12 and 20 weeks in advance of the actual publication of my book, depending on how quickly the next phases happen. Anyway, so I bought my ISBNs, and then I received my link to Nielsen title editor, and I'd done some homework to make sure that I had all the information I required in order to populate the fields related to Nielsen title editor by watching YouTube videos, although there actually aren't very many on that, which is why I'm doing this, on reading up about it. And the core thing you need to have in place, as far as I was concerned, other than the obvious basics about yourself and the title of your book, was going to be metadata. So I'll talk about that in a separate video. But I felt that I was in a good place in terms of describing my book and having the basic metadata I needed to put in place in order to make it as visible as possible. So I followed the link on title editor, add map, as I pressed add book, and there's a map in my book. I've got it, so I've obviously got it on the brain. Press add book, and that's where the fun and games started. Now there's a couple of things I just want to say before I talk about three specific details. The first is that Nielsen are fantastic. So all of these queries I ran, and they were incredibly helpful. I mean, they couldn't have been more helpful, to be honest. So absolutely delightful. Like, kind of all the way through this process, you worry as a self-publisher that you're speaking to people. Effectively, I'm a nobody. I've got no scale. There's no pretense that I'm ever going to do a second book, and therefore, you kind of expect people to have a sense of kind of, well, here comes another one, and maybe they. Maybe they want to deal with bigger fish, but not a bit of it. I mean, my experience, whether it be Ingram Spark or whoever it may be, has been universally positive, absolutely fantastic, and Nielsen are no exception. You ring them, they couldn't be more helpful. They're patient, they explain things simply, and what they suggest, in my experience, has been good advice. Although, once again, I speak from a very limited perspective. So there are three things. So like I said, I thought I had all the information in place. Now there are three small things I just want to highlight. The first is about your publishing name. The second is about the bit codes, and the third is just something about expected availability date. So just on the subject of your publishing name. So like I said, I thought I had everything in place. I then I signed into Title Editor, and when you sign into Title Editor, you have to put in the name of it. It says full publishing name. So I put in a full publishing name of the name of my company, and yet when I signed up for my ISBNs, I put a shortened name of my company because I thought it would look better on the book. So I signed on my ISBNs as Kindling because that's the name of my business that I use on a day-to-day basis. But when I got to the full title editor, it said, when I got to the book title editor, I put in the Kindling Consultancy LLP. And then, of course, I realised as soon as I'd signed up to that I might have two conflicting accounts. Now, and therefore my book would never be found. So I kind of panicked, kind of, oh my God, this isn't the end of the world kind of way, and rang them and said, I've done this thing, are the two ever going to sync together? And they said, in principle, obviously it should be connected by the ISBNs, but the book title editor is the way in which the retailers access information about your book, and therefore, whereas the ISBN is kind of the account you set up with them is more to do with Nielsen, but nonetheless you do have these separate concurrent accounts, and that's not ideal. So I changed the book title editor to go with the shortened version so that everything is this consistent image of the name of the company, the name of the publisher that I want to present on the book, and they couldn't have been more helpful. So if you do make mistakes, you don't worry about it, but I would recommend, which is the bit I missed, that you think about the name of your publisher, that what you want your publishing company to be called before you start this process. It's not a big thing, but the naming is a big thing, but you just need to get that button down in your head so that you get this consistent picture. That's part of the process of ISBNs and title editing, book title editing, in my opinion. When I went into it, there's a form, there's a form to fill in. Now, it does look like it's from the past. I mean, like I say, Nielsen's brilliant. The form itself feels like a slightly prehistoric. It's got a slightly old-fashioned feel to it, but it all works, and there's no reason for everything to be young and funky and trendy and contemporary. So it kind of works functionally. It works great. And it's all pretty self-explanatory. There's a couple of things I just want to mention. The first was the bit codes. Now, I've done some homework before and I had BISAC codes. BISAC codes are bit codes. BISAC codes and bit codes are what? BISAC codes are for the US, bit codes are for UK. I don't know whether it's for Europe, I haven't looked, but that's what I need to deal with. And they are the kind of, you have to imagine that's where your book, if you walked into a bookshop or a library, your book has to be placed somewhere by that retailer or by that library, and a bit code or BISAC code tells them where it should go. So it's quite important because it's where your book will live on the shelf, and where people would go if they were going to find a book on market research, where they would go and find that. And as I said, BISAC codes is the US, bit codes is for the UK. I'd looked up BISAC codes, I had them pre-prepared, but then I get on there and I need bit codes. Now, it's not complicated. You then have the link to the bit codes, but it's the bit codes you need. And I just rang to check that I was putting the right ones in, and of course it is, because they link through to it on their website, and why would they give you the wrong link? They wouldn't. And there's lots of information on bit codes. When you get in there, there's kind of a help article which you can read, and it's a hierarchical structure. The one thing I would say is that they tell you in that kind of advice on it to be as specific as possible, and because it's a hierarchical structure, for example, if you do market research, which is in business and economics, then your book will automatically be in the wider context as well, not just in market research. So you only need to put, if you've got a very specific code, you just need to put that. If your book, for example, is market research and self-help, because it's how to become a better person through insight, then you should put it in both, but you should start with the more specific. My book is about market research. I toyed with it so it could be in all kinds of other fields like behavioural economics and so on, but actually it's not. And they say very much it's about the core of your book rather than sort of side parts of it. So I just stuck with that market research, because you can add 3 additional codes. I don't know whether that's correct, but I decided to be true to what the book really is rather than pretend it's something it's not, in the hope that people might find it. Because like I say, if it's going to be, the only thing that's really going to make a difference is if it's in your face when it walks in or on that smart table. And, that's going to be about creating a successful book. It's not ultimately going to be about whether it's on the right bookshelf. That's what I think. I might be wrong. If you have comments, if you want to teach me otherwise, that would be fantastic. Because, once again, you can change it. If they say anything you put into that form, if you decide you want to change, add to, supplement, that, like for example, the description of your book, the metadata at any stage, you can change that. And they are very helpful. They do change it. It works. They will support you. Second thing is there's just this very small, when you first, one of the first things you put in is expected publication date, and then it says later on when you put in the price, it's about when the book will be. There's a little thing that says when do you expect the book to be available. I can't remember the exact words, something like that, and I wasn't sure whether I meant to put a month before publication date, and I spoke to them and they said in general you just put the same date as the publication date, which is fine. So it's very straightforward. And like I say, once again, it's something very little. I rang up and said I've got this stupid little query. They said it's not stupid and it's fine. It's not the person that's asked. This is what you need to do. So they were incredibly helpful. And similarly, there are a number of boxes there which, for example, have a long form description of your book in addition to the short form. I thought I was paying for the enhanced service. I didn't understand why they were on there. And of course, I rang them up and they said the reason they're on there is because you paid for their enhanced service, and if you hadn't done those boxes wouldn't have been available. Those boxes wouldn't have been available to you. So the final thing I just wanted to say about it is that I was very clear that I wanted to I want to add lots of stuff, but when I looked at it, I uploaded it into the boxes about metadata and description to the book. I wasn't convinced that it kind of sounded exactly that I wanted when my bio and this kind of stuff. So I thought, I'm just going to take a little bit of time. I'm not going to rush it. All you need to do is add the basics so it's out there. This book is coming, and it's kind of if the world of retailing and distribution wants to know that it's coming, that's now available. But I have added the books, and I thought I'll come back and I'll think about the metadata descriptions in more detail over the next couple of weeks and add them at a later date. So I've done that. Just get it up there, come back to it. If you need help, ask, and they shall support you. That's it. I uploaded 3 titles. I uploaded a paperback, a hardback, and an EPUB format. I need to add other formats like Mobi and so on, which I'll also do a video on because it's not that complicated, but I've done the homework, so I might as well add it. And there's nothing more to say. My book is on Nielsen's title editor, and therefore it's coming.